Hey YouTube, today I'm here to talk to you about my everyday carry, which is an Emerson Uber Commander. I've had it for about 3 weeks now, and there are a few items that I've come across that I wanted to talk to you about. And the first thing is the pocket clip. Now I don't know if much of you out there even bother to adjust your pocket clip, but to me I've found that when this came from the factory, the pocket clip was a little on the loose side, and I could flick the pocket clip like this and it would actually make a twanging sound because the pocket clip was barely contacting the surface of the G10. And the advantage to that is I carry this as an everyday carry, and for my job sometimes I have to run and chase a bad guy down or walk very briskly, and being as short as I am, I'm about 5'5", and as big as this knife is, the lower portion of this handle actually rides right at the middle of my thigh. So when I'm wearing jeans and walking, bending, running, I sometimes find that this will hang up on my thigh and it actually pushes the knife up. And at one point I got in my car and this actually got bunched up in my jeans, and it popped itself from right where the opening was of my jeans, so I had to push it back in my pocket, and it gets moved around in the pocket left to right. So what I've found was if you add tension on this clip, it retains the knife in the same place you put it in your pocket. And what I found is if you have a bare needle nose, you pretty much cover up those 3 holes there, and with the curvature facing down, you just push down and add tension. If you want to release tension or remove tension, you push on the clip, push it upward. And you're going to have to do this several times and put it back onto the knife, screw it back onto the knife and drop it in your pocket till you get the right tension. That's the first recommendation I make, especially if you everyday carry this knife. And the second recommendation that I make would be also to change the bushings that come with the knife. And I want to show you that when you purchase the knife and you take it apart, these are the bushings that they come with. They're I don't know, they might be Teflon, they might be polyurethane, but in essence, to me, they're plastic. Now plastic, it's got a lower amount of friction, I guess, and that's why they choose to put them in these knives, to give you that slick feel when you flick them open. But again, because they're plastic, you can tighten the pivot bolt down as tight as you want, to the point where the knife barely slides open on its own. But yet, if you hold the knife and you do this to it, you can feel lateral movement, not because there's excess slop, but because of the bushings. The bushings are plastic and they will give. And the benefit to putting these copper washers is that when you flick the knife open and they lock in place, once the lock snaps in place, that knife, it changes. I mean, I can tell you right now, it changes the overall feel of the knife. The knife almost feels like a fixed blade just when it snaps open. I can tell you right now that changing to copper bushings makes a big difference. The feel of the knife, there is no more give to it, because again, they're not plastic, they're not going to move, and you can torque this screw, the pivot screw, down as hard as you want, to the point where the knife barely opens. But once that sucker snaps open, I mean, it changes the overall feel of the knife, from the point where you slide it open to the point it locks up. I mean, the knife just, it instills confidence that this will not break. I mean, it is rock solid. Not that it wasn't solid before with the plastic bushings, but if you change it to copper, I mean, you can feel the difference. The other thing that I want to mention is if you change from the original factory plastic bushings to this copper, just make sure that the inside diameter is the same, just so that it fits over the pivot bolt. And secondly, don't get a washer that it exceeds the outside diameter of the factory washer, because if you get a washer that's bigger than the factory, it's gonna impact the locking, the liner lock. If that washer is too big, it'll come in contact with that liner lock. So be careful if you change the from the plastic to the copper. Make sure you get one that's right at the same dimensions, and you don't want one that's thicker either. You want it to be almost the same thickness. That way, it doesn't spread the knife apart too much. It'll retain the factory dimensions. But like I said, you will feel the difference. It's like night and day once you change the plastic bushings out to copper. I mean, it just gives that knife that rock solid, rigid feel. It almost feels like a strider when a strider locks. It makes a big difference. The other tip that I found, few coworkers of mine, they swear by Loctiting everything on their knife because, you know, we're moving around, we're on the go. As many times as we open and close our knives, that the screws will walk, as they say. They'll come undone. But the negative side is on an Emerson knife, it's not like a strider. The strider has an Allen head on one side, and on the back side of the pivot bolt, you actually have a keyed opening. So if you do put Loctite, you can put a key on this side and an Allen bolt on this side and spin them open to undo that Loctite. But with Emerson, this side of the pivot bolt, if you put Loctite on the screw side of the pivot bolt and you screw it in and it dries, if you spin this screw counterclockwise, the end on the pivot bolt on this side, it will spin with it, and you'll just end up spinning, and you won't be able to release tension. You won't be able to take the knife apart for field strip or servicing, and it just makes it to where you're pretty much stuck. I don't know how you'd get a Loctite out, especially if this side just spins. I mean, that would be a difficult task to undo. So I don't recommend that you actually put Loctite in the pivot bolt, or I wouldn't recommend you put Loctite anywhere else for that matter, because you can always tighten the bolts. And the other tip, when you do change your washer, you're gonna have to take the knife apart. I recommend that this liner lock, as you can see right here, it has a tendency to slide this way as you open and close the knife. Well, what I've done with mine is I've taken this liner lock here and I've bent it outward a little bit to give it more tension, so that when I locked it and I unlocked it, it would have more tension opening, and it'll give you a more positive feel when it snaps the lock in place. So I've done that. Just be careful not to break or snap the liner. You know, don't overdo the tension on it, but I've added some tension there. So that's pretty much it. That sums up my experiences so far. I've gone and adjusted the pocket clip. I've added more tension. I've changed the plastic bushings to copper. I've added more tension on the liner lock by bending it outward. And really, as an everyday carry knife, this pretty much rides well in my pocket. Yeah, it's a little long, but and it moved around because I didn't have a secure, I guess, or too much tension on the pocket clip, so it didn't secure the pocket knife too tight in my pocket. It would move around, but I've fixed that by adding tension to the pocket clip. And last but not least, one tip: be careful with the edge. I was taking a piece of paper the other day, and I was doing this number, shredding the paper. Well, I must have had the paper at the right angle, because when I went to shred, the knife stopped with a click. It was almost like I took the knife and I tapped it on the table, and when I looked at it, when I looked at what I had done, I rolled the edge. The edge on this is so fine and so sharp that I've managed to roll the edge, and the way I found that I rolled the edge was when I held it at this angle and the light bounced off of it, I saw a small reflection on the edge, and that was where I had rolled and made this part of the blade flat, because I guess I just had it at the right angle and I clipped the paper and it flattened the edge. I've managed to get to fix that by stropping it on my leather strop. So I have to warn you, I mean, the edge on this comes factory just so sharp that you'd think it'll just slice through paper like butter, but if that paper is held at the right angle, um, you're not going to cut the paper. It actually more likely it rolled or pretty much chipped the edge almost. It was just so sharp. Mind you, it didn't lessen the sharpness of the knife, but it was very, very sharp. That fine edge, that piece of paper just kind of nicked it. So anyway, be careful when you play with these knives. I mean, they're very sharp. So that's it. That's my everyday carry perspective on this knife and some of the trick tips I've encountered with just carrying it for the last 3 weeks. Now, if I find more trick tips, I will definitely let you know. If you have any questions, feel free to write it in the comments section. So until next time, take care.